everyone, welcome to another episode of Get Jashed. I'm so excited to have someone joining me today. So I have my friend from across the ditch, Liz Barry, who is a life and career coach. And we just recently spent some time together when I was in New York City. So just feels like a really great time and opportunity to have this conversation. So thank you for joining me, Liz.
Absolute pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's so exciting to have a guest that's so close in a way.
Compared to America.
It's like
Yeah.
we didn't need to go all the way to New York to be able to, but we did anyway. So as I mentioned, Liz is a life and career coach who has spent, I don't want to insult you when I say this, Liz, but you've spent a couple of decades doing this work in various forms for people. Can you share a little bit about your work?
Yeah, so look, I have worked with a massive variety of clients. I always say that my first clients were my three brothers. And really, I decided to become a career coach mainly because of my own career pain and suffering. I was working in clinical research as in drug trials, having done a master's of science in pharmacology, and in a job that beautifully aligned with what I'd studied. And I was flown around the world and had a company car and a Nokia buttons phone back when they were first coming out. And most important of all, my father was proud. Everyone was proud of me. But I really, it was what I call the wrong fit. And it's really important when we're thinking about our careers and whether they fit or not. And I couldn't quite articulate that at the time. I actually thought something was wrong with me. I didn't understand what my colleagues loved about the job. Anyway, I had a bit of a life-changing event in my mid-20s. My parents were killed in a car accident, and there were two big things that happened. One was sitting at their funeral, listening to eulogies about their lives and how they'd traveled the world and done things following their passions in life. And I sat there going, I don't even know what I like doing, let alone what I'm passionate about. And it kind of, it was sort of like, how the hell did I get here? I've just spent 5 years at university cutting up and experimenting on a genetically hypertensive rats for my thesis and working in this flash job that I don't like. So that was one thing that happened. And the second, I kind of came a little bit obsessed with, well, what makes a happy life? And how do I know I like doing what I'm doing? And how can I get back on a path to something that's more meaningful and fulfilling for me? And the other thing that happened is I pretty much learned about career coaching by the seat of my pants. I had to coach my three younger brothers, and my youngest was 16 at the time, and getting them on their paths. And there was something in that I thought, I really love this. And so it's like following the breadcrumbs, following the things that light us up and things we really enjoy doing is a big fat career clue. And so that's what I had to do. And it took me probably from the moment I left high school, going through that journey and finding what it is that I really loved. It took me probably about 10 years to get onto my path. And since then, that is exactly what I've been helping people do ever since. So I have worked with people from teenage years, from when they're at high school, all the way through to people who are looking at retirement, people who have been made redundant, getting back into the workforce. But really, the main bulk of people I work with are people in mid-career. I also did work at the University of Auckland for 8 years as a career consultant, so working with students and grads in their first roles. But yeah, as I said, the main group of people right now are people in mid-career and who are sort of sitting in their jobs going, ah, this ain't it, or I've had enough of this, and thinking that they want to have a career revolution. And I call the difference between a career evolution and a career revolution. A career evolution really is pivoting in, say, the same industry, but a different role, or the same role, but in a different industry. And it's using those skill sets that they already have just to make that pivot. Whereas a career revolution is doing something completely different, which is what I did. I returned to university to do career development work and get into that. So a lot of people come to me thinking they need a revolution, but a lot of the time it's a career evolution. And it's using those transferable skills they already have that they don't realize they have into something else and helping them get there. So that really is, in a nutshell, my last 20 years.
Nutshell. It's such a generous nutshell as well. Um, what I loved that, like, I mean, I loved everything that you shared just then, but what I loved in particular was how you just said, what did you say? You said, because my brain translated it to how I word it, which is following the nudge.
Following the breadcrumbs, yeah.
Right. Thank you. Because like my brain immediately already did that translation. So I was like, wait, what were the actual words? But yeah, it's like, because I talk about that a lot in terms of how sometimes you don't know, or sometimes you don't know, like, why am I feeling the nudge to do this particular course or this particular, like maybe it's a qualification or a something. And it's like, well, sometimes you see, excuse me, sometimes you see that all just come together and you couldn't plan it.
No.
But if you guide it instead, which is, like it sounds like a lot of what you do as well. Like you can't necessarily plan the whole way because you don't always know your path until you're on it.
You don't. And often, Steve Jobs, if you ever look up the address he did at Stanford University, he calls it joining the dots. His opinion is that you can't join the dots until it's already happened. You look back and join the dots.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I feel like that's part of my job as a coach, is to help them join the dots for what that looks like in the future.
Well, that's it. Like, I think there's such and maybe that highlights the difference between having support and guidance or just kind of like, you know, Steve Jobs
DIY it.
wasn't in his brain, but Steve Jobs seemed like very much of a head down. This is just the way I'm going to go, and then I'll figure it out. And he did, but like I think maybe that's the beauty of, like, we both work in coaching in different ways, but that's the beauty of having that guidance, is because
That's
sometimes
it.
we're lost if we have to wait to join the dots in retrospect. Sometimes that's going to be a natural part of life, but sometimes we get to actually kind of have an idea of what we're trying to do. And I think that's such a beautiful, it feels so luscious and supportive, that intersection of following the nudge or following the breadcrumbs, while also having that guidance to go, well, let's do it intentionally as well.
That, and what you just said then, let's do it intentionally. Most of the clients I see a lot of them have had amazing careers, really, but they say, I haven't been intentional about it. It's kind of just happened by accident, which is, that's about being open and ready for the next role or next opportunity that kind of feels like it's landed in their lap, some of them. But they have this point where they go, is this really what I want to be doing? This moment of, oh, hang on a minute, hang on. And it's often mid-career they have that. And they feel like, and I often say to them, how long is your runway? How long do you want to be working for? And if let's say they're in their mid-40s or 50, they'll be like, another 10, 15, maybe 20 years. And it's like, that is a significant amount of time of this one precious life that you have.
Yeah.
It does, investing in yourself to pause for a moment and take stock of your life and what does your soul really want to do for that next 10, 15, 20 years? It's worth it to take the time to do that, to carve out the time to do that. I often have people reach out to me and their kids they've got preschoolers, they're looking after their aging parents, they're working full time, they're trying to have a marriage, they're trying to they're juggling so much in their lives and they're feeling unfulfilled. And I often say to them, look, don't waste your time coming to someone like me until you have been able to carve out a little bit of time to pause and have a think about what you really want. Because when you reach out to someone like me as a coach, I'm going to be getting you to do homework. I'm going to be getting you to start exploring and ask yourself some big questions. And if you are really busy and frantic and chaotic in your life, it's really hard to listen to the nudge, as you said.
Yeah.
What's something else that's bubbling up for you?
Yeah. And I think like even being asked that question sometimes can nudge someone to actually do that. Like, they don't, and I don't know what it's like to have kids or anything, but like I know that it's busy, but sometimes it's that nudge, like having someone go, well, you need to be able to carve out time because this is what we're going to actually do, allows them to go, oh right, that's part of what's going to be required. Yeah, no wonder I can't figure it out, because
Yeah.
it's, oh, I don't know yet, because I'm not giving myself any space, not even 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes busyness is a survival strategy for many of us. And hey, man, my I call it my lizard, my inner lizard. Her name is Busy Lizzie.
Yeah.
And my husband often goes, "Oh my God, Busy Lizzie's here." Because it's that frantic, I've got to get stuff done. And Busy Lizzie has definitely journeyed with me through my life. And it's a survival strategy for me, is to be busy, because when we do pause and take stock and start listening to other parts of ourselves, like our intuition, sometimes we don't want to hear it. Sometimes it might mean making some big changes and we're afraid of those.
um I love how you explain, because I remember we were speaking about this in New York City as well, just to name drop a city.
Yeah.
But I love I love how you explain the difference between a career revolution and a career evolution, because there feels like such a safety, and a safety in terms of like it's safe to explore, not a
Mm.
safety in, oh, I'm standing still and being safe, but like there's a safety in that you provide, the way you speak about it, because you're not necessarily suggesting, hey, let's burn it all down.
Yeah. Oh,
You're that's that.
exactly. And I loved how you said that in New York when we were talking about career revolution. You said the kings and queens and the kingdoms, they didn't want a revolution. And it's like employers don't want a revolution.
Yeah.
Often we get often we get to that. We're like, oh, I just can't stand anything. I need to make a complete and utter change. I want to just throw everything out. I want to, as you say, burn it down. But often and that's what I hear when I do clarity calls with people who are thinking about this. But yet when they go through the process of the guidance that I give them, they realize, oh, actually, I am on my path already. There's just a few tweaks I need to make. There's
Yeah.
just a few different, like for example, one of the exercises I always get clients to do is a values clarification, and realizing actually I need to make some getting aligned with my values and what the company's mission might be. Are my values aligned with where this company is going? And if not, well, okay, maybe it's just finding another company that has a similar alignment to what mine are. Or it could be a conversation with their manager. Just, hey, look, I'll give you an example, Jess, of what a client I had a few years ago now, actually. She worked in the bank, in one of the big banks here in New Zealand, and she just felt that making a difference, being part of something larger than her, it was a big value that she felt wasn't quite being met working in a bank, right? And just a tiny pivot within the bank. She now works for the philanthropic arm of the bank.
Oh,
You know, and it was, and she's still there now. I mean, how many years ago was that? About 3 or 4 years ago. She's still there now, and there's a lot more of her needs are being met. And
yeah.
that's what she had to do. And here she was thinking, oh my God, I've got to go and work for a not-for-profit, and I've got to go and save the polar bears or whatever it was. But it was just a smaller pivot, and it wasn't, you know, I have clients too, their whole idea of burning things down, or let's burn the boats. I'm going to quit my job and then I'm going to work it out.
Yeah. And like,
Very brave person.
I'm sure that works for some people, but I'm pretty convinced you don't need to go through that stress in order to make change. Um,
Oh,
and like I've spent a little bit of time in recent years in the recruitment industry as well, and I know that one thing that our recruiters always say is um, when they are speaking with candidates is have you had the conversation with your manager or at work yet, like about what it is that you want or need, like, you know. And I think there's such a service in that, because it's not saying, hey, like, come on, like on in this particular way, it's not saying, hey, come on, like, we want to, you know, get money off you kind of thing, but it's like a, no, this is the actual point. And it's such a service that you do that is just, it's guiding them. And yeah, like the kings and queens did not want any of the revolutions. Like none of them were welcome by the the reigning monarchs, right? So like it's nice that not nice, it's not just nice, it feels like an integrity for the
mhm.
person that you're serving, but also like you're not just encouraging people to burn bridges with employers either. Like it's an integrity for employers, because I'm convinced that when people are happier or more content or more fulfilled in what they do.
Absolutely. I mean, the big thing for is staff engagement. I mean, I was just looking at stats actually for disengagement, what it costs Australian businesses, it costs the Australian economy. It's like $3.5 billion a year.
So
It's
much.
from staff disengagement.
Yeah.
And what the ripple effects of what that is huge. That and turnover are the two biggies. And so
I
if we
think that,
find engaged employees, the innovation that comes out of it, even just the culture, the retention, it's amazing what happens when we have happy, engaged employees. And sometimes all it takes, as you just said, is just a conversation with their manager. But the problem is some people don't even know why they're unhappy. They can't quite put their finger on it. Sometimes they can, but that's why one of the exercises I get clients to do is the values clarification. Are your values being met here? Values, when we really understand values and do a values exercise really well, I always call them the decision makers. That really helps us make good decisions, because a lot of the time values are being met. That's why they're still there. That's why they haven't left yet. They are being met, but there might be one or two that aren't, and that's going, can I have the conversation or somehow align them better with this organization? And if I can't, are they a non-negotiable? And if
yeah.
they are a non-negotiable and I don't think it's going to get any better here, that's when you want to go, well, it might be time to leave. It might be time to move on.
Like even that exercise that you take them through is so valuable, because I always call values like very similar to you. I always see, like, I try to explain them as they're a blueprint, so that it's, you waste, like, you don't spend as much energy making decisions, because you already know what your baseline is, in a way, you know. Like sometimes it's just a matter of comparing, and it may not always be an easy decision, but it, like, or easy to follow through on, but it's an easy decision, because if you know what's important to you, and
Mhm.
that's just your framework or your blueprint, right? Like that's there, and then you can go, oh, this new thing has come along. Oh, does it? How does it stack up against this? Oh, it does. You, more or less, great. Or oh, it doesn't. Okay, guess I need to do something. Like there's so much value in that, not just for now or for the current role, but just in every aspect of life forever.
Mm. And when you talk about well-being, Jess, that it absolutely impacts our well-being, mental, emotional. physical.
Well, that's like I was going to say, it's almost like we work on the two sides of the same coin, because it's like I go in and go like, okay, let's support your team by giving them these skills to sort of start to identify things like stress and everything, but also I can't like, if there's processes or if there's thing or values misalignments in place,
Yeah.
like that can't be fixed with this. It has to, there's something else that needs to change
Yes.
or
Yeah, that's right. So well-being is massive. I mean, there's too many toxic workplaces right here. And man, it affects everything when someone is in an environment like that. It affects how they're showing up in their relationships at home, their friendships, their marriage, the way they're parenting.
or like just the burnout levels.
Oh,
I have a friend who has been telling me recently that because he's sort of in the last, oh God, I'm going to say in the last year, but it's probably been the last 6 months, has gone into a new workplace, a new role, and he's very good at what he does, and he's very like it's a very niche skill in what he does. And he was saying just the other day he's interviewing elsewhere because he's so burnt out already in that workplace, like, and they all work remotely, like he's so burnt out because of his toxic manager. He's like, this is the most toxic person I've ever met. I'm like, oh, that's like that burnout churn is so quick, or can be so quick if
wow.
it's, so yeah, there's such value in the guidance. And again, I know I said this before, but again, I love how you frame it, where it isn't one way or the other. It's not, burn everything down, like fire and brimstone kind of thing.
Not at
And
all.
it's also not, oh, well, just, like just find ways that you can enjoy where you're at, or, like it's not kind of it's not
Mhm.
gaslighting or manipulating
Not at all.
yourself or themselves either, in the sense of, oh, just find ways you can appreciate where you're at, like, but don't do anything about, like, there's
Mm.
such a
Well, some of this is having courageous conversations. Sometimes it might feel very challenging for an employee to go and say to their manager, look, these are the issues I'm having. And being able to articulate that in a way that the manager can receive it and hear it without feeling offended or eye rolling or whatever. Sometimes I do a lot of coaching on that, like teaching people how to have the conversation with their manager and how they can get their needs met so they can thrive in their work. They can feel engaged, they can feel appreciated, they can feel that their ideas are valued, and otherwise they're just going to keep their ideas to themselves, and it just stifles the innovation within the organization.
Yeah, and I think like, yeah, there's so many good parallels here, because I think if workplaces and managers aren't asking or aren't open to understanding the progression that their team members want,
Yeah.
or the things that that help their team members thrive, then they are missing out as well on, like, but they're in their own way. They're like, there's so much that comes into being a manager than just the title.
Oh,
That,
yes. Well,
oh, and
your
again,
job is to serve the team.
yeah, and it's a buildable skill, but it is a skill. Like, usually we see a lot of managers who are so technically skilled in their craft and very good at that technical skill, that they sort of promote up to manager, but then it's a matter of, oh.
Yeah, different skill set to management, right?
Mm-hmm.
They often say we're promoted to our next level of incompetence.
Oh,
And it's a whole new set of skills we've got to learn in that next level.
oh, yeah. I like that. I've never heard that before, but I really like it
It's the
because
truth, right? It's like a
it,
lot of people I've never done this before. This is new now. How
yeah,
do,
and
how do I learn how to lead a team? How do I learn how to serve when I'm been so used to being in the project and doing the thing, not actually, oh, I've got people to think about here.
yeah, because I think if like if you're in a growth phase in your career, which where that is a choice, some people choose to, like there's different phases in our lives as well. But if you're in a growth phase in your career, if you are going, if you are only trying to go for jobs where you're just kind of moving sideways, or unless it's a strategic move, right? I imagine. But like if you're only sort of looking for the ones where you already have all of the skills, and maybe this is an issue for women because I know that there's the stats around how women in particular are, we feel like we have to make sure we match every single thing on the
Gosh,
job and on the job ad and the criteria before
that
we
was iconic at that one.
before we can even apply for it, versus men. And we love you men, but also like there's an audacity that we love that like we could definitely use more of. Where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, if like if there's a few and it sounds interesting and they're up for the challenge, then they will allow themselves to put themselves in the ring. And
Mhm.
like, but that's a great thing to do. Like that is a good thing, that's not a criticism. So I think
Mhm.
it's that whole thing of, unless like if you're in a growth thing, if you're applying for jobs that you already know exactly how to do only, you're likely going to get bored.
And also, you're actually disadvantaging yourself because employers, I mean, there's a few different schools of thought with this, but the one that I actually agree with is that em- employers actually want someone that only has 50 to 60% of the skills, but have the right attitude. Because if they find someone with 100% of the skills, they know that that person's not going to last long because they're going to get bored and they'll move on.
Yeah.
But they want someone that looks like they can grow into the role. So they only have, as I say, 50 to 60% of the skills that is required, but they've got the right attitude in order to grow and take ownership of that role. And they will probably last longer in that role.
So good.
Hmm.
And it's and you mentioned before, it has such an impact on well-being and like
Oh,
at work, at
in a
home.
major way. I mean, I'm sure every single person listening to this can think of someone in their life that absolutely loves their job. To be honest, they're actually that it's not that often we find people who completely love their job. There's probably more people that are dissatisfied or disengaged in their work, that they're easier to find in our orbit. Because the stats say that less than 30% of the world's workforce are engaged in what they're doing, which is shocking. And in my opinion, the average human spends 80,000 hours at work.
Mm.
That is over a third of our lives. And we get this one precious life. And I think what a dreadful shame to not be engaged in what you're doing. So, but if you can, if the listeners here can think of who do you know in your orbit right now that absolutely loves their work, that they just love it, what do they like to be around? What do they, how do they live their lives? And you'll find that people gravitate towards them. They have an energy about them. You feel good in their presence. You don't feel like you have to walk on eggshells in their presence. You feel quite, yeah, they uplift you. And so, when we are engaged in what we're doing, it can be sometimes part of our identity, but it just there's such a flow-on effect that it affects everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the changes that you can see in people that you've worked with over the years, like whether it's in your business or previously? What are some of those
So
notable?
clarity of there's nothing worse than feeling stuck, feeling demotivated, kind of living for the weekends, going through the motions. These are good signs, by the way, if people are feeling this. I'm just going through the motions. I get to work on Monday and I can't wait for Friday, kind of thing. And hey, man, I have been there. I know what that feels like. A lot of people come to me going, I know I should have made a change years ago, but I'm just feel stuck. Like it's awful. But when they do finally make the change, and it is entirely possible, no matter how old you are or what stage of career you're in, it is entirely possible if you know how and you have that clarity. But I love that. This is why I do my job, Jess, is when I get the email or a text message from a client going, you're never going to believe it. You're never going to believe it. It just felt like it landed in my lap, but I'm now in this role. I love it. The team is awesome. What I'm doing is exactly what I thought I'd be doing. And it's just they just love life. Their kids are proud of them. They want it. It's just a wonderful, it's feeling on purpose, that fulfillment and meaningful work. And, imagine finding something that you love so much that you could do it till you were 90.
Yeah. And for many people, that sounds like an impossibility. They're like, oh, I couldn't imagine. Like they're just stuck in it. I can't imagine.
That's right. And that's that limiting belief that comes up, as I say, our lizard brains that like to offer us all these reasons why they can't change. I'll never make this kind of money in another job. I'll have to start again. And I've already spent 30 years investing in this area. I've got all this experience and networks. I couldn't possibly make a change now.
Well, that's a great segue. So tell us about
And
transferable skills.
that's right. And speaking of females thinking we need 100% of the skills, one of the things that I hear all the time is I have to go back to school. That means I have to retrain.
Yeah.
That is a classic. Often females will say that. And there's three words I love to say. Are you sure?
Oh.
Or is that true?
Mm.
And because what we're talking about, Jess, is a fear. I can't possibly make the change now because, and that's usually because people will judge me. I can't start all over again. By the way, that's a complete lie. You are never starting again, ever. You have, as you say, transferable skills. Transferable skills are different to job-specific skills. They're skills that we can transfer to any situation, whether it be work or social life or anywhere. And it's not just the skills we learnt at work. We use our whole life, from the skills of even our volunteer work, anything that we've done, we use to whatever it is direction we're going in next.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why a slight tangent, but related. I think that's why you mentioned volunteer work. It's why a lot of employers or even universities, right? Like, if I think about all the extracurriculars, if I generalize all the extracurriculars that you school that universities love to see, it's because they know that there are skills being developed in that.
Totally.
Yeah. So
and that's because I worked at the university for 8 years. So the people I worked with, the digital natives, they grew up with computers in their house. I didn't get a computer in my house till I was probably my final year of high school. I can't actually remember now.
Our first computer was very slow.
Right. We remember how big they were, and yes, that's right. So the digital natives I used to work with, so my job was to teach them how to find work, how to get work. And we used to work very closely with employers who would come on campus, and we'd run recruitment programs and expos. If I heard it once, I heard it 10,000 times from employers. Listen, we can teach employees job-specific skills. They're actually very easy to teach. We send them on a course and they learn how to use Xero accounting software, right? Teaching people transferable skills are much, much harder to teach because life teaches us them. And we learn them from as young as early childhood. So when an employer will read a CV, that they might look at, yep, that student or grad has the degree, cool, tick. But what they're looking is the things that they have done alongside their studies that makes them employable. Can that person speak to a real live human? because digital natives struggle with that. They'd rather send a text message or an email through a screen. That is a huge, so any sort of customer service jobs or any volunteer work that they've done where they've interacted and talked with other real life humans is just gold on a CV.
Oh my.
Can they turn up on time? That's really hard for some people. Do they do a good job? Have they got good work ethic? Those are the things that employers want to know. And even people in mid-career, what else have you done? Are you part of anything else apart from just work, work, work?
Fulfilling for you that you can, like that, bring that fulfillment along for the ride. Like, just
Absolutely. How well do you, like, I used to work with all the medical students going off to get their first jobs. Now, we all know that the first few years of a medical residency is just brutal. One
yeah.
of the things that recruiters would look at, whether they wanted that student, and especially in the hospitals that were sought after, is can that student manage their well-being? And that would be a thing on their CV. I would say to them, how well do you manage your well-being? What are you doing? You need that on your CV. Okay, I love running, or I've got some sort of family support around me, or I'm into meditation, or whatever it was. That was a requirement on the CV.
Amazing.
So
Like,
these are the things employers are looking for, not just those job specific skills.
yeah, if I had to articulate one of, like, there's one transferable skill that's coming up to me right now, is like, I worked as a checkout chick in high school. That was my first job.
Right.
I swear, I will probably swear this forever unless new information comes to light, that that job is what helped me learn how to just watch people be cranky for no reason and not take it on. Like, because
What
I
fabulous.
I
I mean,
watched customers come through, and some of, like, obviously many were very lovely, right? Like, but some of them, I have distinct memories of some of them just being in a shitty mood, and I'm like, okay, like, I'm just gonna show up and, like, do my job, right? And, like,
mm,
whatever they've got going on, I'm like, hi, how are you? They're like, oh, you're just asking me because you're paid to. I'm like, actually not. But anyway, I'm just genuine, like, I would say that because I'm like, no,
of course.
just so we're clear. I'm paid to check and bag your groceries and not to care about how you are, but I genuinely, like, whatever. Like, I would explain that in a better way, in a
Of course.
14-year-old chess way. And
Yeah, those early jobs, man, they, for any listeners who've got kids, wow, you learn so much from them.
yeah, because there was this one, I can picture him, I almost remember his face almost. But, like, I remember his energy. He, like, it was either they would just continue being cranky. I'm like, okay, there's something, like, none of my business, la la la, or they would get crankier because they're not making me cranky. And you'd see that sort of grunt as well. Or their whole
Mm.
tune change because they're like, oh,
Right.
the world is not all the world is out to get me. Oh, because there's this lovely young teenage girl who's actually being quite genuinely pleasant.
Dissonance, not dissonance, resonance.
Yeah,
They resonate with that, your energy level.
yeah, and I wouldn't have had those words then, but yeah, it's resonance. But then I think of scenarios in my previous working life, like my previous career, where I've had sales directors on the phone to me for an hour just talking at me and talking, and it's the same experience.
Same thing.
It's
Yeah.
just like, cool, this is the solution. Like, but that's such a transferred skill that I've not just sort of connected those two. Like, I've been,
I see it in higher levels. I've got a client who he started a company and he now owns 40%. He's slowly selling down his shares, and he has shareholders. And in order to be a shareholder, there's two things you have to know how to do. Number one, how to grow a team, and number two, how to win work
mm,
to be a shareholder. And if you can't do that, you need to sell down, or you can't be a higher shareholder than the others.
yeah.
That those two skill sets are not actually easy to find.
Yeah.
They are really, really difficult to find. And those, those early career experiences, or even, as I say, we learn them from as young as early childhood, that the communication and interpersonal skill sets, the ability to go out and chat to a client, how are you getting on? Let's have a cup of coffee. What's happening? Being interested, asking questions, not talking too much, letting them talk, finding out what they're needing and going, hey, well, we can help you with that. Farming their clients for more work is one thing, or slowly networking and pulling in a new client. They are really difficult skill sets to find. And so these are the things that employers are really wanting. That's, to be a shareholder, obviously, of this particular company, but being able to talk to clients is just so important. And so for anyone that has those people skills, you really are at an advantage in the new world of work, because otherwise we've got computers that can do the rest,
Yeah. The
and
like
robots can do the
AI
rest.
never take over some skills.
They
It
are.
just
Yeah,
won't,
that's right.
yeah, like it just won't happen in the way that like no.
No, well, that's where, doing things that robots can't do, and that's the big one. The two big ones that robots can't quite do, well, I say one, is our communication and interpersonal skills as real life humans. And the second one is creative problem solving.
Yes. Yeah.
The
They are.
human brain is still superior at the moment. But
Yeah,
getting a bit
let's
scary.
go with that. Oh, Liz, I could talk to you forever, I think. But how can people find you and follow you and reach out to
Right.
you?
Well, look, we are lizbarry.com. I am based in Auckland, New Zealand, but I am a coach that coaches people from all over the world. And at the moment, I am open for taking on new clients, both either one-on-one or in my program, Become Your Own Pathfinder, if people are thinking about making a change or wanting to have a bit of a review about what they're doing with their lives or their careers. I'm closing the midnight New Zealand time on the 6th of November, so they could enroll this week if they're interested.
All right. Well, I will include that link in the caption in the show notes so that if anyone is interested, please go follow Liz, connect with Liz, set up a clarity call with Liz if you are interested or if you feel like you're at a bit of a loggerhead with your career. I just speaking with Liz, just for anyone listening, I'm not even talking to you anymore, Liz. Just speaking with Liz is such a warm experience. So um, you will definitely feel held and heard and listened to. So thank you so much for your time. I could have kept going, but
Um,
but gotta gotta keep going. But yeah, thank you so much. And
Absolute pleasure. It's so wonderful to be invited to have a chat with you, Jess.